can become what's called a pratyekabuddha. That means a private Buddha who doesn't tell anything. Or you can become a Bodhisattva. A pratyekabuddha goes off into his ecstasy and never is seen again. Bodhisattva is one who comes back and appears in the everyday world and plays the game of the everyday world by the rules of the everyday world. But he brings with him upāya. He brings with him some way of showing that he's been on the journey, that he's come back, and he's going to let you in on the secret too. If you'll play it cool and also come back to join in the everyday life of everyday people.
You remember John Tunstall? Remember the stories he tell us about the three Chinamen playing Fan-Tan? Someone runs up to him and says, "Hey, the world is coming to an end." And the first one says, "Well, I best go to the mission and pray." And the second one says, "Well, hell, I'm gonna go buy me a case of mezcal and 6 whores." And the third one says, "Well, I shall finish the game. I shall finish the game, Doc."
Hi, Grant Jarvis. How's it going? Hope things are good with you too. There's a lot going on right now, but you know what? There's always a lot going on right now, isn't it? Oh, I should have gotten some water. Now, I wanted to show the Young Guns 2 quote, that snippet, because it's something that has always resonated with me, and I think it's a good one because what I'm going to be going over tonight is going to be playing back 40 minutes and 31 seconds of Alan Watts' Being Far Out, and I may stop at certain points to talk about certain things, but I think I'm just going to, most of the time, let it run by itself. But again, there's a link in the description box. Go ahead and read it, listen to it. It's there, it's free. And you don't have to have me interrupting. You can just go ahead and just go with the flow. Now, what's peculiar about talk about synchronicity, huh? Young Guns 2, when he says 3 China men playing Fan-Tan. Now, Fan-Tan is a game. You can say it's called sevens. Now, if you've done your research, 7 is quite the number, isn't it? And well, the 3 responses. If the first person, after they've been told that the world's coming to an end, the first person goes, "Well, I best go and pray." And when you think about it, is why wait till that last moment, right? To go out and pray. It's shouldn't they have figured it out before the end comes? The second one goes, screw it. He probably knows, he probably knows something, or maybe he doesn't. He doesn't go and pray. He goes, hell, I'm just gonna go get a beer and 6 whores. And this peculiar number 6. I mean, really? 6? And then the third one goes, well, I shall finish the game. And it's a good one, because you could do all these things, but what's important? While there are many things that are important, all of that was done. All of that was handled. It's like all the important stuff I've already taken care of. The world's coming to end. Yeah, already got all the stuff I needed to done. I'm good. I'm ready. Let's finish the game. Doesn't need to go out and make amends for all the mistakes that he made in life. Don't have to go and and just enjoy the pleasures, I guess, of the physical. And he's like, yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm ready to keep playing till the end comes. All right, so I'm gonna go and move on over to the playback of Alan Watts, and there's 3 different parts to this in Being Far Out. The first one is Secret is Out, and you can easily see that. All right, good. What I'm just gonna do is I'm gonna scroll down while it's playing, pause it on occasion, and when I'm ready, I shall unpause and say something. But before we go on there, I just want to remember what my hotkeys were. So if I need to chime in, I can. And let's see if I can find it. I have too many. I need to clean up here. Let's see. There's a mic auxiliary. Would I put Alt N? Let me just double check real quick. Sorry. I hate to hold the show. Almost there. They need a shortcut to get to the shortcuts. You know, that'd be kind of nice. Let's see. Here we go. Control 1, Control 2, that's it. Okay. That's easy enough. See you in a bit.
Now, today, we are living in an age which is quite peculiar. Because in the world of science, there are no longer any secrets. Because the method of science requires that all scientists be in communication with each other. And therefore, that every scientist, as soon as he has discovered something or got a good idea, he rushes into print. And it's important for him to do so, because some other scientist somewhere else in the world might be thinking about something on the same lines and would be stimulated in his work by this man's speculations, even if not by discoveries. And so the whole scientific world tries to remain in communication. And for this reason, it was absolutely impossible to keep atomic energy a secret. In former ages, that might have been managed, because there were many secrets once upon a time. And people were not admitted to these secrets unless they were in some way tested and found capable of handling them without running amok. We live in such a dangerous age because all the secrets are out in the open and anybody can run amok with them. And that's just the situation we have to face, and that is just the situation we have to handle. It is too late to stop it, because that would be, as they say, locking the door after the horse has bolted. The vice president of an extremely important corporation in the United States, very progressive and very vital, a few months ago said, there are 2 major forces operating in the world today, for good or for evil. One is Red China, the other is LSD. And there is a certain reason why such a thing as a certain chemical, which is capable of opening people's minds in a certain way, should be something extremely disturbing. Because this particular chemical, in common with a number of others that have been known for centuries, but have been rather played cool through those centuries, is capable of doing something which simply cannot be tolerated. That is to say, capable of letting properly prepared individuals, or sometimes improperly prepared individuals, in on a secret which is very closely guarded, and which is, as a matter of fact, the deepest and most fundamental of all our social taboos. I have just finished writing a book, which I've had, with a sort of tongue-in-cheek attitude, had the temerity to call The Book. And it is subtitled, The Book, you see, on the taboo against knowing who you are. Because that is really the thing that cannot be let out. Sex is not really a serious taboo in our culture. If you are initiating a young person into life, and you realize that your son or daughter is going to college, and that you ought therefore to have a serious talk with them, they'll laugh at you and say, all this thing you're telling us about sex, we knew years ago, and we know more about it than you do. So that is not a subject for a serious initiation talk to a young person. So we have to think again and try and find out, think deeply, what is fundamentally taboo in this culture and perhaps in other cultures as well. What information, in other words, would really let the cat out of the bag and give away the show? Now, quest around a bit. Ask yourself this. For what reason would a person be considered hopelessly insane? What sort of claims must a person simply not make? Well, there is one, and that is if anybody claims that he is God. That simply isn't done. Certainly not in our culture, although it's very frequent in India. But in our culture, that is simply not allowed, because we, most of us, from a Christian background, and if not that, from a Jewish background, and there's a great deal in common. Because both Christians and Jews are deeply concerned about somebody called Jesus Christ. Both Christians and Jews are in a way followers of Jesus Christ in different ways. He is a problem to both. Because he was the man who came out and discovered he was God. And that simply is impermissible. The Jews handled it in one way. The Christians handled it quite as effectively in another way. The Christians handled Jesus perfectly, even more tactfully than the Jews, by putting him on a pedestal and saying, this was the only man who ever was God, and nobody else was really so before, and certainly nobody can be so afterwards. Stop right there. Put him on the altar, bow down to him, worship him, so that everything he had to say will be null and void. And it worked beautifully. But you see, the trouble about deep secrets is they can't be repressed indefinitely. Now here's the problem, you see, that there are certain processes, some of which are what you might call spiritual exercises. Others are simply chemicals. Others are just horse sense, whereby one comes to see very clearly indeed that black goes with white and self goes with other. And as this becomes clear to you, it's rather shaking. Because, look, if what you define as you is inseparable from everything which you define as not you, just as front is inseparable from back, then you realize that deep down between self and other there is some sort of conspiracy. If these things always occur in combination and look very different from each other and feel quite different, nevertheless, the feeling of difference between them allows each one to exist. And so underneath the opposition or the polarity between self and other, or between any other pair of opposites you can think of, there is something in common, as there is, for example, between figure and background. You can't see a figure without a background. You can't have an organism without an environment. Equally, you can't have a background without a figure, or an environment without organisms in it, or without things in it. You can't have space, which is unoccupied by any solid. You cannot have solids not occupying some space. This is absolutely elementary, and yet we don't realize it. Because, for example, the average person thinks that space is nothing. It is just a sort of not there-ness in which there are things. And we are slightly afraid that not there-ness, that nothingness, that darkness, that the negative poles of all these oppositions will win. That they will eventually swallow up every kind of being and every kind of there-ness. But when you catch on to the game, you realize that that won't happen. Because what is called not existing is quite incapable of being there without the contrast of something called existing. It's like the crest and the trough of a wave. You can't have a wave that is all trough and no crest, just as you can't have a wave which is all crest and no trough. Such a thing has never been manifested in the physical universe. They go together. And that is the secret. There really is no other secret than that. But it is thoroughly repressed. And therefore, we are all educated to feel that we've got to fight for the white because the black might win. We've got to survive. You must survive. That's the great thing we're all working under. And pounding it out day after day in anxiety. Because this is a description of anxiety. Anxiety is the fear that one of a pair of opposites might cancel the other. Forever. And if by any chance, by any means, you find out that that is not so, you have an entirely new attitude to what human beings are doing. Which may be very creative, but which also may be very dangerous. You see through the game. The game called white must win. Because you know that neither black nor white are going to win. Because they belong to each other. So one of the problems of the various chemicals which can change the human mind in certain ways so that it becomes apparent that inside and outside go together is that they do rather give the show away, and people who take these chemicals and see through the human game cannot be trusted. They may decide to be good sports and go back into the game and play it as if it were for real, or they may not. And if they don't, what's going to happen? Now, you see, what is, let me speak specifically for a moment. I said the subject of this is LSD. LSD is one such chemical that does produce this curious effect of making you aware of the polarity of things. It does lots of other things. It does lots of rather unessential and trivial things. And these, of course, in all the publicity in the various national magazines about LSD, get thoroughly emphasized. In other words, when somebody says something's real psychedelic, they mean bizarre. And when the national magazines try to illustrate the effect of these chemicals with various photographs, they come on with blurred photographs of all sorts of things higgledy-piggledy messed together. Naked girls seen through prisms. Well, that's absolutely nothing to do with it. If you wanted some sort of appropriate illustration for a Life magazine article on the effects of LSD, you would have one very simple solution. You would publish the most gorgeous color reproductions of Persian miniatures and of Moorish arabesques and of the illuminations of Celtic manuscripts. That would give you the story. so far as changes in human sensation are concerned. But there would be one thing very difficult to put across in pictures, because the people who looked at them, if they didn't get the point of view, wouldn't see it. And that is what I will call the sensation, as well as the intellectual understanding, of polarity. That is to say, that the inside and the outside, the subjective and the objective, the self and the other, go together. In other words, there is a harmony, an unbreakable harmony. When I'm using the word harmony, I don't necessarily mean something sweet. I mean absolute concordant relationship between what goes on inside your skin and what goes on outside your skin. It isn't that what goes on outside is so powerful that it pushes around and controls what goes on inside. Equally so, it isn't that what goes on inside is so strong that it often succeeds in pushing around what goes on outside. It is very simply that the two processes, the two behaviors, are one. What you do is what the universe does. And what the universe does is also what you do. Not you in the sense of your superficial ego, which is a very small, little tiny area of your conscious sensitivity, but you in the sense of your total psychophysical organism, conscious as well as unconscious. This is not something that arrived in the world from somewhere else altogether, that confronts an alien reality. What you are is the universe, in fact, the works, what there is, and always has been, and always will be forever and ever, performing an act called John Doe. And this is such a subversion of common sense, but is in fact, matter of fact, something, if you stop to think about it, that is completely obvious. Only everything conspires to prevent you from seeing that obvious thing. Because when you were babies, practically, all your parents and your teachers and your aunts and uncles and your older brothers and sisters got together and they told you who you were. They defined you as Johnny, who is just Johnny. And don't you come on too strong, Johnny, because, no, you've got elders and betters around here. But you're responsible. You're a free agent. You'd better be. And so, when you are told from childhood that you are expected and commanded to behave in a way that will be acceptable only if you do it voluntarily, you remain permanently mixed up. That, if anything, is permanent brain damage. But that's the idea, you see, because that's the game we're playing. You started it. I didn't. See? That's the game we're playing. And we can make all kinds of complexities out of that, and really, in a way, have enormous fun. But once anybody sees through that, well, we're frightened. Once you get this sense of polarity, of your inside being the same process as your outside, and your ego being one and the same process as the whole universe going on, then we are afraid that people may say, well, good equals bad, and we can do anything we like, and we needn't in any way be further subject to the ordinary rules of human conduct, and we can wear what clothes we like or no clothes at all. We can have what sexual life we like. We can do anything. And we are going to generally, because the world is being rather oppressive towards us, challenge the whole thing and run amok. And a lot of people are doing just exactly that.
Now I'm gonna probably add in two things here. One, maybe three, a couple, who knows. One, I would say that it's funny to think in certain religions, and especially I would say the the religions where they say you've been created by God. And what God is, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You've been created by God. Thus, you can never become God. So, when we create babies, we create them, they turn into us, adults. We see them grow, we grew up. And to think that something that created us, that we can't become that, doesn't seem like that follows in the natural sense. Maybe in a supernatural sense, that's not possible because people said so. And just think about that for a minute. Now, the second one is he's talking more about LSD, yet most of us would probably, at least if you're watching now, you're probably experimented with psilocybin, magic mushrooms, mescaline, whether it's peyote, San Pedro, what have you, or ayahuasca. And interestingly enough, all of those are Schedule 1 drugs. But it is interesting that they are Schedule 1 drugs, isn't it? And while I was on ayahuasca, not just once, twice, but 3 times, it showed me the things that I needed to rectify, fix. Just knowing that there's something I did that I should probably handle. And what's interesting is it's nothing that I did. It doesn't talk about anything sexual. It didn't show me anything sexual. It didn't show me things that you might say would be considered bad in the unlawful sense or illegal sense. It was mostly having to deal with people that I knew, associated with, and was somehow close to, where things did not go right. So it would be good if I made them right. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to change. But, if you do, maybe it might be good. Maybe you'll like that. And so I'm getting there. I mean, I made attempts. Definitely made attempts, which I would never have done had I not used ayahuasca. And they're all good things. I didn't have to do them. So when I guess I'm discussing with other people of like sexual acts, like I wouldn't say, let's just say the biblical stories of gay people, homosexuals and stuff like that. It didn't say, hey, you should probably look into the Bible with the homosexual stuff. That needs to be, you need to put that out there. It's like not even a tidbit. It is like, hey, this is stuff that you should know. And all that other stuff is little. And basically, if you act out of love, it's something that you don't have to worry about. Now, there is a line there, which I don't know, and we'll just leave it at that. But who knows? Maybe when I experience other conscious eye openers, that maybe it will show me something like that, right? But yeah, a lot of stuff that you may see in society is no, don't do that. No, it really doesn't tell you or show you anything to rectify in that regard. Anyways, just thought something I should share, and let's continue.
So I want to introduce into this whole problem some ancient wisdom. I have really 2 things to talk about. How cultures which always did know in some way, or among whom a large number of people always did know this secret, handled it. And then I want to make some observations about how we're trying to handle it and how it's not going to work. Among the Hindus and among the Buddhists, this view of the real identity of a human being has always been known, at least by a very influential minority. The central doctrine of the Hindu way of life, I call it that rather than a religion, is in Sanskrit, tattvamasi. You're it. To put it in a kind of colloquial way. You're it. And it is the which than which there is no whicher, which they call the Brahman, or the Atman with a capital A, meaning the self. You are only just kidding that you're just poor little me. See, the function of a guru, that is to say a spiritual teacher in India, is to give you a funny look in the eye. Because you come to him and say, Mr. Guru, I have problems. I suffer and it's a mess and I can't control my mind and I'm miserable and depressed and so on. And he gives you a funny look. And you feel a bit nervous about the way he looks at you. Because he's reading your thoughts. And this man is a great magician. He can read everything that's in you. He knows right down into your unconscious, and you know all the dreadful things you've thought, and all the awful desires you have, and you are rather embarrassed that this man looks right through you and sees them all. But that's not what he's looking at. He's giving you a funny look for quite another reason altogether. Because he sees in you the Brahman, the Godhead, just claiming it's poor little me. And he's going to eventually, by all sorts of subtle techniques that are called in Sanskrit upāya, that in politics means chicanery, and in spiritual education means skillful pedagogy. He is going to try and kid you back into realizing who you really are. That's why he gives you a funny look. And why he seems to see right through you. As if to say, Shiva, old boy, don't kid me. I know who you are. But you're coming on beautifully in this act. That you're somebody else altogether. And I congratulate you. You're doing a wonderful job. Playing this part, which you call the person. My person. A person is a fake. The word means a mask. So if you read books on how to be a real person, you're reading books on how to be a genuine fake. The word persona, as you know, means a mask worn in Greco-Roman drama. So if you come on to the Guru and say, well, he asks you who you are, Sri Ramana Maharshi, when anybody came to him and they said to him, as people do, who was I in my last incarnation? Or will I be reincarnated again? He always replied, who's asking the question? And everybody was irritated because he wouldn't give them answers about what they were in their former lives. He just said, who are you? And he looked at you. Have you looked at photographs of this man? I keep a photograph of him close by because of the humor in his eyes. They're looking at you with a dancing twinkle, saying, come off it. Now then, in these Asiatic traditions, it is well recognized that people who get the knowledge that you're it may very well run amok. And therefore they always couple any method of gaining this, whether it is yoga, whether it is smoking something or drinking something or whatever is the method, they always couple it with a discipline. Now I know the word discipline isn't very popular these days. And I would like to have a new word for it. Because most people who teach disciplines don't teach them very well. They teach it with a kind of violence. As if a discipline was something that is going to be extremely unpleasant and that you're going to have to put up with. But that's not the real secret of discipline. I would prefer to use the word skill. Discipline is a way of expression. Say you want to express your feelings in stone. Now, stone doesn't give way very easily. It's tough stuff. And so you have to learn the skill or the discipline of the sculptor in order to express yourself in stone. And so in every other way, whatever you do, you require a skill. And it's enormously important, especially for American people, to understand that there is absolutely no possibility of having any pleasure in life at all without skill. Money doesn't buy pleasure. Ever. Look, if you want to get stone drunk and go out and get a bottle of bourbon and down it, you can't do that except for people who have practiced the distiller's art. You can't even make love without art. Where I live in Sausalito, we have a harbor full of ever so many pleasure craft. Motor cruisers, sailing boats, all kinds of things. And they never leave the dock. All that happens with them is their owners have cocktail parties there on Saturdays and Sundays. Because they discovered, having bought these things, that the discipline of sailing is difficult to learn and takes a lot of time. And they didn't have time for it, so they just bought the thing as a status symbol. So, in other words, you can't have pleasure in life without skill. But it isn't an unpleasant task to learn a skill. If the teacher, in the first place, gets you fascinated with it. There is immense pleasure in learning how to do anything skillfully. To make carpentry things, to cook, to write, to calculate, anything you want. It can be immensely pleasurable to learn the discipline. And it is completely indispensable. Because look, you may be a very inspired musician. I'm not a musical technologist, you see, and I regret it, but I'm a word technologist. But I can hear in my head all kinds of symphonies and all kinds of marvelous compositions, but I don't have the technique to write them down on paper and share them with somebody else. Too bad. Maybe next time around. But you see, so far as words are concerned, I can express ideas because I have studied language. And I have worked very hard. Not that I didn't like it, I intensely enjoy the work of writing a book, although it is difficult. But it's fascinating. To say what can never possibly be said. So, you see what's happening. What you have to do, you have inspiration, but then you have to have technique to incarnate, to express your inspiration. That is to say, to bring heaven down to earth. And to express heaven in terms of earth. Of course, they are really one behind the scenes. But there's no way of pointing it out unless you do something skillful. You see, we are all, at the moment, absolutely in the midst of the beatific vision. We are all one with the divine, or I don't like that sort of wishy-washy language, but we are all there. But we are so much there that we're like fish in water. They don't know they're in water. Like the birds don't know they're in the air because it's all around them. And in the same way, we don't know what the color of our eyes is. I don't mean whether you've got blue or brown eyes, but the color of the lens of your eye. You call that transparent. No color. See, because you can't see it. But it's basic to being able to see anything. So in order to find out where you are, there has to be some way of drawing attention to it. And that involves skill. Upāya in Sanskrit. Skillful means. So, it's all very well. Anybody can have ecstasy. Anybody, as a matter of fact, can become aware that he is one with the eternal ground of the universe. But since that's what you are anyway, I'm going to ask, so what? When a hero goes on an adventure, and he leaves his people, and is going to a strange land, he can go away and just hide himself round the corner in an obscure house, and then appear a year later and say, I've been on a heroic journey, and tell all sorts of tales. And they say, prove it. Because they expect him to bring back something which nobody has seen before. Then they believe you've been on the journey. So in the same way exactly, anybody who goes on a spiritual journey must bring something back. Because if you just say, oh man, it was a gas. Anyone can say that.
Now, this is where I'm going to just take a quick one and just talk about the ayahuasca experiences, just because that was my journey and I had to bring something back. What is it? It's like, hey, you can say anything. You can just make up everything. All right. How about this? Before you take your ayahuasca journey, just try to remember everything. Just for that day, okay? And maybe a day before, just a couple of days. And when you take your ayahuasca, whether it's once, twice, or 3 times, it's going to show you that everything that you did leading up to that, Mother Ayahuasca knew you were visiting and gave you signs. And she's going to express to you what those signs were, and you're going to be like, wow. Because you didn't notice them before. You didn't think of anything of it. But there's no reason for you to have done those certain things, but you did them. And then you did them for the specific reason that she's going to tell you. And then also, the first one, it seems like everyone experiences it. The first experience of ayahuasca, you are going to break down in the most emotional breakdown you've ever really felt in this lifetime of yours. And it's her pain, it's her suffering, it's just all the emotions just flowing through you. And it is a joyously, emotionally painful experience. Because the joyful part is that you understand why she's experiencing all this pain and burden, but that she's still enduring all of it, and that's just the joy of being a part of it, to know that. And from that point on, you're like, wow. And then I would say the third thing to bring back to you, if you do 3 different experiences, 3 trips of ayahuasca, the first one will most likely show you who you are. The second one will most likely show you who you are not, and your death, and showing you how you should be humble. And the third one is of rebirth, and I would say a rebirth. I don't know if anyone's 3 experiences are the same. I've never ever talked to anyone who's taken ayahuasca, as far as I know, especially 3 times. So I'm hoping that one day I can run across someone who has and share the experiences and take notes. But just something that I will say, it's like, hey, you could just be saying anything, right? Well, I tell you right now, take it 3 times. And those 3 things I just told you, see if you experience them. And if you do, it's good. But look, you won't know till you try it. And he can prove me wrong easily. All right, let's keep going.
Now this is why in the doctrines of Buddhism there is a differentiation between 2 kinds of enlightened beings. They are both forms of Buddha, which is to say the word Buddha means somebody who has awakened, who has discovered the secret behind all this. And in other words, all this thing we call life with its frantic concerns is a big act, which you, in your unconscious depths, are deliberately setting up. So you can do one of two things when you discover this. You can become what's called a pratyekabuddha. That means a private Buddha who doesn't tell anything. Or you can become a Bodhisattva. A pratyekabuddha goes off into his ecstasy and never is seen again. Bodhisattva is one who comes back and appears in the everyday world and plays the game of the everyday world by the rules of the everyday world. But he brings with him upāya. He brings with him some way of showing that he's been on the journey, that he's come back, and he's going to let you in on the secret too. If you'll play it cool and also come back to join in the everyday life of everyday people. Because this is the rule. If the world is dramatic, if the world, as the Hindus say, is a big act put on by the divine self, one of the rules of coming on stage is that you don't come on as yourself. You come on as the part that you're going to play. It's very bad form if an actor always acts the same way. That's what's called a star, as distinct from an actor. A real actor can become anything. And so, but in private life, well, he's just Mr. Jones. But he doesn't come on the stage that way. So in the same way, if you know that behind the scenes, in the depths, fundamentally, you are it, you don't come on that way. It always comes on as something else. That's the rule of the stage. Because without that, there wouldn't be a play. There would only be reality. No illusion. And the whole point of life is illusion. From the word Latin ludere, to play. Showbiz. The show must go on, so don't give it away.
One thing I forgot, but also adding to this is you can call it the divine play, and I don't think there are many that call it the divine play. I think in some aspects in Hindi it might be considered something like that with Leela and Maya, and I was going to do something like that, but I realized no matter what I do, I can't really get people to understand until they have this experience. And then when they have this experience, I don't have to try to explain it for them to understand. So it's a weird juxtaposition, right? So I'd like to open people's eyes, minds, whatever you want to call it, and just kind of show them, hey, this is what's going on. But they're gonna be like, yeah, crazy app on, yeah, okay, let's go out fishing. And then later on, there'll be a time where they're gonna be like, oh man, you know what? I had this experience, and oh my gosh, Shaban, I think you're right. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's just go fishing. He's like, no, really. I mean, this is what happened. And you're explaining all, and it's like, yeah, I know. And I made those videos, trying to explain it to you, and you're going to be like, yeah, I know you did. I didn't understand it. It's like, I wouldn't have known that unless I experienced it first. So here I am trying to do and show people, what is going on? No one's gonna believe it, right? And then you have this experience, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, I believe it." It's like, yeah, I did. Your videos, it didn't make any sense to me. I mean, now it does, but yeah, I mean, all you had to do was just tell me, go and experience it. And things will start to make sense. The pieces will fall together. All right. And the second bit, I kind of want to go earlier, and too bad I'm out of order, but that's okay. A lot of people say I'm out of order. I would say the skills, the discipline, and to think, what are your skills? How do you apply them? I know a lot of people use their skills to make money. that's one thing. Most of the time you learn a skill to make money. My skills to make money, of course, comes in the form of technology and understanding technology. Understanding what doesn't work, what works and what doesn't work. I mean, that's pretty simple. A lot of people can know what works and doesn't work, but in expanded version of that, I can figure out how to exploit something. Exploit can be turned bad, but it's not necessarily that. What an exploit typically means is to utilize something in a way that it wasn't meant to be utilized. So you can usually exploit anything. For example, you can use a screwdriver to cut food. I mean, it's not the best thing to cut food with, but hey, you don't have a knife, you got a screwdriver, and you just cut up food with that screwdriver. It's kind of exploiting what it was meant to be used as. It wasn't meant to be used as a knife, but hey, you can use it as a knife. So it's similar to that. But in conjunction with that, I would say I apply strategy. It's not just like in warfare, but strategy can be applied to many things. And in conjunction with exploits, it makes strategy exciting. For me, it's to, as far as strategy goes, what makes me enjoy strategy is to apply something to where the person who I'm up against has no idea exactly what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, and once he encounters it is going, how do I handle this? Because I don't know how to handle it. This is totally unexpected. I never knew this could happen, and well, it's game over. And then and then it is game over. But the next time they're like, but the person does again, this is what I'm going to do. So they prepare for it. And it's not going to be as good next time. But I don't even worry about that. I just find something else that's new. Now, on that side, the exploitive side of strategy, it'd be like playing rock, paper, scissors. And I exploited the whole rock, paper, scissors game. So no matter what you picked, I would always win. And so they're going, I don't get it. How come he always wins? It doesn't matter what I pick. It's because I exploited it to the point where you would never know that I was in a way not actually cheating, but gaining some I would say added knowledge or understanding certain patterns that you didn't notice, and therefore I just take advantage of it. Now, rock, paper, scissors is a horrible example. I'm just trying to state out to you that rock, paper, scissors is a pretty straightforward thing. I'm not going to try to make it more complicated than it is. I think one day I'll come up with a better analogy and certain things like that, but let's just leave it at that. And so just think of what your skills are. You know what your skills are, and how are you applying them right now? Hi, Samantha Peters. So if you are applying them to get money, well, it just kind of feeds into the system of everything going around. It's really not gonna make anything change differently, whether it's good, bad, whatever. But if you apply your skills in a way to really show the beauty of what it's being applied to, oh man, that is just something totally different. It's akin to watching basketball players. Like I'll just use basketball as an example. Like I play basketball where it's ugly to watch. You're like going, man, that's the ugliest layup. That's the ugliest jump shot, right? But I'll score. I'll make points. I'll play on a team of just misfits and I'll win. And it's like, that is just such ugly basketball. And then you just see someone else. They just have these beautiful layups. It's just textbook perfect fundamentals. They got these beautiful dribbling skills and this perfect shot. Yet they miss like 80% of the time. And they lose games, and it's like, why is everyone so wowed about this person? I mean, yeah, the person looks good, but they're losing. And I'm the total opposite. I make it look horrible, but you know what? It's effective. So, yeah, it's definitely something where eventually you've got the working parts, right? Like, I am just the minimalist. I'll just make something work. You know, that's why when I work on technology, I create prototypes. And when I create prototypes, I create 90%, 99% of it that's functional in a way it's meant to be used and useful. And then I'll present it, okay? And when I'm presenting it, I'll get these superfluous questions, okay? I've got something that works, which is could probably make them millions of dollars. They focused on, I don't really like that color. Does that font have to be there? You know, couldn't you make the design like this? And I'm like, look, I can make all those changes now, right? But no one is using this the way it's used, which we can apply it to use it. And they're looking at just the art of it, right? On the other hand, there's someone else that has a prototype that does nothing like that, does exactly the same thing as what everyone's using now. It just has a whole redesigned look to it. And they go, wow, that is beautiful. I really like that. You know, can you do this? Like, yeah, it does everything that we're doing now. It just looks pretty. They go, that is awesome. We should use that. And it's like, well, we are using that. All you just did was change the design. It's just like having, I don't know, 87 Oldsmobile and just making it look like a Cadillac. It's still an Oldsmobile. It runs like an Oldsmobile. It just looks like a Cadillac. So for me, I created a whole new engine, everything interior. You know, I just didn't have all the other parts for it. But people don't notice that. So people look at the art, just the form, and are mesmerized by it. And that's most people. But then the beauty of something that's useful and new and creative and innovative and just really out there, most people just, they don't even want to care to look that way. And so the idea of what we typically see, when we see people playing video games, we see them play to just perfection, the same way. It's just, whether it's first person shooter, just point, click, and shoot. Oh wow, that guy is awesome. Point, click, and shoot. Man, this guy is so fast. Point, click, and shoot. It's like one shot, one kill. I mean, is this guy hacking? Is he cheating? One click, one shot. And then you've got someone else where he probably misses 80% of the time, but still kills people that are just a point, shoot, click, that are really good like that, because they have to use some tactical sense where the other person, they're just so good they don't need to use tactics, right? You've got to the point where they've refined their skills so much that if they can see it, they can kill it. But how do you counter that? Well, you just can't be seen by that person, otherwise you're dead. So you have to find a way to kill them without being seen. So that involves tactics, and it doesn't look pretty. You can't, you know, you're just watching and it's like, what's this guy doing? He's just kind of running around. Why is he squatting? Why is he laying down? He should just go out there and find him and shoot him and kill him. Well, the other guys can do the same thing, just better than him. So this is what kind of keeps going on. We just see the perfection of one form and not necessarily the others that are imperfect looking, but actually in many ways better. But we can't perfect to that form because we ignore that form. Anyways, I quibble. Let me continue on.
But truth has a way of leaking. It gets out. But then the important thing is, you see, when the truth gets out, those who catch hold of it must find a way of staying in contact with what society calls reality. That is to say, if you have a radio, you don't only need an antenna, you also need a ground. So what happens in the world of mysticism, of psychedelic visions and so on, needs to be grounded. So then there are always two directions in which such a discipline works. One, preparatory. In other words, those who taught disciplines for awakening in the Orient were always careful to screen, first of all to screen those who applied, and then after screening them, to make them sensible, so that they knew how to handle the game of ordinary human existence and play it by the ordinary human rules. In other words, that they had strength of character and were not the sort of people who would be wiped out because they had no strength of character by an overwhelming experience. Then they let them in. But there are certain disciplines, such as Zen, where you get into the essential secret very early on in the discipline. And after that, they are concerned with much more training in showing you how to use it, how to use the power, to use the vision which you have acquired.
Now, when he's saying a lot of that, I often wonder if many of the players that are on the stage have been abusing this knowledge and therefore playing a part or understanding and just doing whatever, helter-skelter, And what are the consequences for that? We don't know. I mean, I have a hunch. But maybe they fine-tuned it to know, we can do this, but we need to do this thing. And if we do this thing, we gotta do this thing. Because if we do this thing, we gotta do this thing, and we need other people that need to do this thing, so we're all together on this, and therefore, when it comes around, we go around, and we don't just vibrate into nothingness and things like that. And how do we play a part when we know it's not the real thing? Like, for example, I think playing with kids is the funniest thing, because they'll want to be scared. They'll be like, boo, right? Especially like right now, my 2-year-old. And for example, I'm laying in bed, and he comes to the bed, and he gets under the covers, and then I go, Roland, where are you? Where's Roland? And he like uncovers himself, and he just laughs. And you could do this over and over again. And then there are times where like he'll do that, and I go, boo, and then he just laughs, and he goes back under the covers. He knows when he goes out of the covers, I can say boo again. He expects it, so he's just laughing before I even say boo. And of me scaring the kids, or the kids trying to scare me, they like it when when they go boo, and I'm like, I know it's not scary, and they know that they're not really being scary, but the reaction that they get of it works, right? They have a good time, and I can enjoy it as well. So I wonder if it's something similar or akin to that, where I know, like, I'm not afraid, and I know what that it's supposed to be scary, yet I think if you just go around and just waiting for the game to end, and you're just like, whatever, I'm just gonna go and read a book and play a game, whatever. And it's like, hey, I thought we were playing a game. Can't you just play a game? What does it have to be like that? What is it? As opposed to someone who would normally do that, drink beer and watch TV all day and ignore the kids. And I guess they're not really going through it at all either, right? But at least in some way, it's like, I want to enjoy the game. Even if I know I'm going to lose, maybe I'm going to win. Maybe it's not even a point to do either, but the point is to try. And sometimes I wonder if competition with younger kids is a way to, or just older kids as well, to just kind of prepare yourself in some ways. Example is chess. For example, when I tell my first professional, I won't even call it professional, my first official tournament, more accurately, I was playing to win. I was good, and I played against this guy. I was probably like 19 at the time, 18 or 19. The guy was, I'd say, in his 50s, 60s. And he was losing to the point where he was in tears. And my brother, he was like very doggedly, just all fires, like, just beat him, just win. You can win this tournament. And I'm like, it's not worth it if I had to make an old man cry. And so I just lose, even though I knew I could win. And then there's another point that for me, that's just, I don't know how I would do that in the active life. I guess I would probably do the same thing. And there's the time when I'm playing my mother's friend's daughter. So I'd say I was 15 and she was probably like 11, I think. And I have so much experience playing chess against my brother, and she's just learning. I'm just kind of teaching her, and showing her, and she's getting better. And I'm thinking to myself, every time I'm playing her, I'm beating her, but I'm beating her at a level where I'm not crushing her. I'm making subtle mistakes. I'm making it kind of close where she's taking some pieces, where she could possibly win if I just kept making horrible mistakes. But I know I'm not going to make those horrible mistakes. And she makes mistakes, and I don't quite capitalize on them. But, like, she's like 4 years younger and not really good at the game. Do I necessarily lose on purpose to get her to enjoy the game? But if she knows that I lost on purpose, she wouldn't enjoy winning because she knew that I lost on purpose. So I have to get to the point where I lose, and act as if I didn't lose on purpose, so she can enjoy the experience of winning, and not necessarily play where she knows she's going to lose all the time, or if she wins, she's going to win because she lost on purpose, right? It's just a weird situation. So, is that what prepares one for whether they want to finish playing the game, and regardless of the outcome? But what is the point of the playing and finishing the game if it's not the outcome? I think that's more of the point that could be focused on. But let's keep listening.
And so it is with the current, what we will call LSD scene that is raging through the United States. It unfortunately lacks discipline. And I'm not trying to say this in a kind of severe, authoritarian, paternalistic way, but only that it would be so much more fun if it had it. In other words, when people try to express what they have seen in this kind of changed state of consciousness, they show 5 movies going on at once, projected upon torn bed sheets, with stroboscopic lights going as fast as possible at the same time, and 11 jazz bands playing. And they're going to blow their minds, baby. And everybody else who hasn't seen this thing look around and say, well, it's a mess. I don't like the looks of it. Let's suppose that while you were very, very high on LSD, you looked into a filthy ashtray and you saw the beatific vision, which is, of course, the case, because wherever you look, if your eyes are open, you will see the face of the divine. Then you come out of your ecstasy with the dirty ashtray and say to everybody, here it is. No. There is a possibility. If you are an extraordinarily skillful painter, or even photographer, of presenting the dirty ashtray so that everybody else will see almost what you saw in it. But you will have to have a technique which will translate every grain of ash into a jewel. Because that's what you actually saw. But that requires mastery of an art. And I'm afraid people think that all it's necessary to do is just throw out any old thing, because under that transformed state of consciousness, any old thing is the works. But nobody else can see it if they haven't shared that point of view. So then, this becomes for us in the United States an extremely important social problem. The cat is out of the bag. We are living in a scientific world where secrets cannot be kept. And anyone, anytime, can pick up something which will short-circuit all the ancient religious techniques, yoga practice, meditation, etc., etc. This is all very embarrassing, but it will happen. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people. And they will see what all those sages and Buddhas and yogis and prophets saw in ancient times. And it will be very clear. So what? So you see, you can say, look at all these people who haven't seen it. This is a temptation. Look at them all going about their business, earning money and grinding it out at the bank or the insurance office or whatever it is every day, and how serious they look all about it, and they don't really know it's a game. And you can cultivate a certain contempt for people like that. But it's very, very bad to do that. Because, of course, don't forget, they have a certain contempt for you. You see, always the nice people in town who live in the best residences, they know that they're nice, because there are some people on the other side of the tracks who are not nice. And so at their cocktail parties, they have a lot to say about the people who are not nice, because that boosts their collective ego. There would be no other way of doing it. You don't know that you're a law-abiding citizen unless there are some people who aren't. And if it's important to you to congratulate yourself on being law-abiding, you therefore have to have some criminal classes, outside the pale, of course, of your immediate associates. On the other hand, the people who are not nice, they have their parties. And they boost their collective ego by saying that they're the people who are really in. Whereas these poor squares who deliver the mail faithfully and who carry on what you call responsible jobs, they're just dupes. Or when they earn their money, all they do is they buy toy rocket ships with it and go roaring around and so on, and they think that's pleasure. So the people who are not nice boost their collective ego in that way. Neither of them realizing that they need the other just as much as a flower needs a bee and a bee needs a flower. So when you see the people who you think are not in on the secret, if you really understand, you have to revise your opinion completely and say that the squares are the people who are really far out, because they don't even know where they started. See, an enlightened Hindu or Buddhist looks at the ignorant people of this world and says, my respects. Because here I see the divine essence, having altogether forgotten what it is, and playing the most far-out game of being completely lost. Congratulations. How far out can you get? So if you understand that, you don't start a war with people you might say are square. Don't challenge them. Don't bug them. Don't frighten them. The reason is not because they are immature, because they are babies, and you mustn't scare babies. It's nothing to do with that. You mustn't frighten them because they are doing a very far-out act. They are walking on a tightrope, miles up. And they've got to do that balancing act, and if you shout, they may lose their nerve. See, that's what we call the responsible people of the world are doing. It is an act, it's a game, just like the tightrope walker. But it's a risky one. And you can get ulcers from it, and all sorts of troubles. But you must respect it. And say, congratulations on being so far out. Now, today...
Oh, and thus that ends it. And I think that's a good one to end on. That's pretty funny. What he's saying is what if you are following along with the current culture and news, I guess, is people who might be considered NPCs, people who took the blue pill, people who will just never understand it, right? We're talking about these people, or people you might say don't have the a soul filled with the essence, the divine essence, whatever, however way you want to call it. That they are, we don't know, you can't know who's awake unless you know that there was like to be asleep and that there are people asleep, type of thing. You don't know what an NPC is until you see a PC, a player character, an actual player character, and like, how do you won't know who the player characters are until you see the NPC, and you go, oh, that's quite the predictable response. And so, right, I think he's got a good point here, right? Let them do their thing. It's like sometimes when I'm watching things that are occurring, and sometimes I don't know, and like I have a feeling the ones who are out there responsibly in the big leagues right now are in on it, and they're just doing an act, just like, for example, Donald Trump and a whole bunch of the elite, Congress, etc. But I think the people who are just like so raptured into watching and being a part of the political ideology or faction of one or the other, and it's just it's interesting to watch and see, because there is a lot going on. And then when I get down to it, is like, they've been doing this for a long time, so have they come and got your guns yet? No. Well, they go, well, just wait and see. And it's like, yeah, isn't that what we were doing, just waiting and seeing? And if we don't see it, we're still waiting, right? Well, just wait and see. And it's just kind of like the whole religious part, right? It's like the world's gonna end, and so. It's like, oh, when is it gonna end? Well, it's gonna end someday. Well, can you tell me a date and time? Like, oh, it's this. No, I guess we'll just wait and see. Yeah, we'll wait and see. You better hurry up and do something about it. And we wait, we see nothing happen in that regard. So do things end? Certain things end. Stages end. The show keeps going on. I think, maybe it's the end of a game, but you play another game. And what else is there to do? Just go entirely to sleep and not wake up? What's enjoying that? Sometimes sleeping is fun if you can dream of something, but then that's a game in itself, maybe. Like, who can sleep and have the craziest dream? Let's have that game. So anything be made into a game. But yeah, I think it's fine that there are those that aren't ready to, or won't ever be ready. There might be a time they may, not in this game maybe, but in other ones. It's I have to point it out as let's say the story of and I should probably put this in another video, but why not? I'll just keep going for maybe another 9 minutes. Let's say the Gnostic creation story. Let's just say the demiurge was created by God, by Sophia, the mother, and without the divine, the highest of the high, the creator, and thus didn't have the divine spirit. And thus, when he showed up as the divine spirit in human form, the demiurge was going, what is that? That thing is called a human. The one thing that says, like, for example, the demiurge was so high on his ego and ignorance, he's going, hey, if there's anyone out there more powerful than I, then just show up. And then, of course, this being showed up in human form, so it's like, what is this? And none of his other creations could see it. But so what happened was that this demiurge ended up making a very crude recreation of what the highest of the high, the creator, showed up as. It's like, haha, well, I'm just gonna make little dummies of this guy, and I shall be the lord over them. And thus, I think what happened was like, this is gonna kind of bite him in his face, bite him in the butt, whatever. That's what Sophia is saying. And what happens is, well, creator showed up, is like, well, it's not bad, but I think it's better if it was like this. And then, you know what? I don't like that they're just your slaves. I'm gonna make it so that they're free and they can become more like me because you obviously created them, so they can't be like you. And let's see what happens after that. And so you've got the whole point of demiurge, just like, man, I can't win. There really is something more powerful than me, and I can't ever win. What's going on? It's like the things I created, they're meant to be my slaves, and now they're all free. And I keep telling them, no matter what I do, hey, if you do this, I'm going to torture you forever. And it's like, they do that, and it's like, well, I can't even torture them. I can't do anything to them because they're protected. So, goodness gracious, what can I do? Right? So there's that whole aspect of, okay, so if something that was created without the divine essence can attain the divine essence and become like the creator and a part of the creator, it's like, why anything else that doesn't have it, why can't that happen to them? It can. It can. So rather than throwing it all in the trash, why not just recycle it? It's that type of thing. It's like, hey, instead of throwing it in the trash, why don't you just put that in a compost? Oh yeah, we could do that. Hey, instead of just putting that in the trash and burying it and just doing away with it, why not do something else with it? So that's kind of the same gist. And then at the end of that, what's more amazing is like, hey, the demiurge didn't get created with the divine essence. Why not we just give it a divine essence? It's like, are you sure we want to do that? I mean, have you seen what the demiurge has done? Well, yeah. I mean, can you imagine, that happening to you? I mean, wouldn't you kind of behave in the same way? It's like, I don't know. Let's find out. So, who knows, right? But I mean, that's just a great story. And then what happens after, when the demiurge has, I think you call him Satan, whatever, devil, has the divine spirit and finally gets redeemed. And I mean, wouldn't that be the greatest story ever? Rather than the greatest fall, you have the greatest redemption, the greatest rising, the most fallen. And what happens then? What happens to everything else? It's like, what was, I guess, certain forces here for? What was the good here for, if not for that? I mean, to hold out this long. Is it just to destroy all evil? I mean, is good about destroying evil? I don't think so. I think evil is it about destroying good? Possibly. But neither has happened, right? And so what is the best of good? Best of good isn't in destroying. It's about creating. It's about adding. It's about, hey, come over here. Let's get a hug. It's like, no, I ain't hugging you. Like, come on. Okay. We'll wait. Maybe we'll change your mind. It's about being very patient and loving. And, isn't that what your God is supposed to be about? So, that's gonna be a game changer. I think that's a bunch of unknowns, even for probably the known ones who know what's going on. I mean, isn't it? It's like, what happens if the demiurge has a divine essence, Mother Earth, Sophia, goes, well, you know, I love everybody, everything that I created here, but I mean, this here is my son, and that we can finally go and leave together, and as mother and son, and you know, he can grow up somewhere else. We're moving, you know, we're going to Kansas, we're leaving Kansas, we're going to California, and like everyone else is like, oh, what do we do? I mean, if you're going, I want to go. I mean, I don't want to stay here. I mean, this game was a little bit hectic. Some of it was fun. Some of it wasn't. Most of it wasn't. But I mean, it's a hard one over here. It's a hard game. It's like, can't we play like checkers? You know, chess. Whew. Checkers is a lot more fun. Maybe Chutes and Ladders, or sevens. Sevens is more of a heavenly game, I guess. But yeah, I think there's gonna be a time for that. I mean, there's no time, but in the sense of I'm speaking English, whatever. But if we want things to grow, we need someone who tends the garden, right? So who's gonna tend the garden? Who's gonna go like, hey, you know, what happens when no one takes care of anything? It just grows wild. Something happens, it dies, something else comes about. You know, most of the time it just becomes stagnant. You know, when you just ignore something, you don't pay attention to it, it just becomes stagnant. There's no movement, stagnant. So who's gonna do the breathing of the waters, the tides, and all this other stuff? You know, who's gonna make it rain? Maybe a basketball player. You know, maybe it's a united effort. Whatever. I mean, when you think about it, it's everyone's time to move on. But if you move on, someone should probably stick around before they move on, so everybody can catch up. You know, it's got this. It's like if you go in a group and you're hiking, and some people are just really slow walkers, some people are really fast walkers. You got a couple of people. I mean, the slow people can't go faster, and the fast walkers, you know, they won't slow down. So what do? You pretty much try to keep everyone around together a little bit. You know, some are still going to be far behind, some are going to be far ahead, but you know, you're still there, just trying to make sure that you don't get too separated where you can't find each other. All right, so that ends it for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a long one, hour and a half. I know I should probably make these shorter. So the next one that I'm planning on doing a live stream on, if I don't do it before Friday night, which Friday night is going to be politics night, is The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. And what that is Aldous Huxley takes mescaline and writes about it. Tries to show people what that experience was. If you don't know who Aldous Huxley is, well, half of what you see going on in the world today is A Brave New World, and I guess the other half is 1984. So that will be interesting to look at. I have not read it yet. I just kind of found out about it, which is weird how I find out about certain things, but I guess you find out about certain things somewhere, somehow. All right, good night, and I'll see everyone later. See you, Samantha. See you, Grant, and so many other people who haven't said a word in chat, but that's okay. It's good to be quiet.